Hello, welcome to our Image Accessibility Workshop. Today we'll be talking about how to add alternative text to images, how to write alt text for linked images, decorative versus meaningful images, when to use image descriptions, and what to do about images with text. Why is image accessibility important? Images often contain information that's important for users to have access to. They might be a photograph, a graph or chart, or text. In these cases, you must provide a way for users who can't see the image to get the information. So what is alternative text? Alternative text, also called alt text, is a text description that you attach to images on web pages and in documents. Alt text is usually not visible, it's part of the code. How is alt text used? Users who are blind rely on screen reader software to use web pages. When a screen reader encounters an image, it automatically states that there's an image and reads the alt text. This allows users who are blind to have access to comparable information. If an alt text tag is empty or contains a file name, they won't have access to the image content. Do people with other disabilities use alt text? Yes. Some people with low vision may have enough vision to see that there's an image, but not enough to be able to see what an image contains. If an image lacks alt text, it can be frustrating. People with dyscalculia, or low numeracy, have difficulty understanding charts, graphs, and diagrams. Visual agnosia is a rare condition that affects comprehension of imagery rather than vision. Does anyone else use alt text? Yes, alternative text displays whenever images don't load. This may happen if a person's internet connection is slow or spotty. Also, some people turn off images to increase speed or to save data. Alt text is also used by search engines. So alt text isn't just good for accessibility, it's also good for usability and equity. Is alt text required? Yes, alternative text is required for meaningful images. It is required for compliance with the DOJ Consent Decree, WCAG 2.0 AA, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Alt text is a crucial feature for accessibility. How do I write alt text? Don't use the words image of or photo of. Screen readers will already announce that it's an image. It should be brief. The general recommendation is to keep alt text less than 100 to 125 characters. Usually, you don't need to use the word logo. It's understood that an image at the top of a page with an organization name is a logo. This slide contains an image taken at the UC Berkeley Botanical Garden. It shows a greenhouse on a bright sunny day surrounded by tall trees, a variety of plants, and a walking path. Here is the alt text that we added to the image on the previous slide. Rays of sunshine fall across a greenhouse and a plant-lined path at the UC Berkeley Botanical Garden. This contains 101 characters. But there's more than one correct way to write alt text, as long as you keep it brief. Some people are more descriptive than others, and that's okay. This alt text would also be acceptable. A greenhouse and trees on a sunny day. This contains 39 characters. Although there's more than one right way to write alt text, context is important. What you include in your alt text depends on the context. So consider how the image relates to your text. If your text is about green spaces at UC Berkeley, it makes sense to include UC Berkeley Botanical Garden in your alt text. If your text is about storm damage at the garden, it may make more sense to say a 60-foot oak tree before the damage during Wednesday's storm. Context isn't the only thing that should cause alt text to differ. If an image functions as a link and clicking it takes the user to another page, the alt text should describe the destination, not the image content. So let's look at an example. Here's our example image. It shows 3 students in Cal-Bear t-shirts who appear to be friends walking together on a sunny day, and Say Their Gate is seen in the background. What might we use as alt text for this image? I wrote, 3 students in Cal-Bears t-shirts walking under the Say Their Gate together, smiling for the photo. However, if this image contained a link to admissions, it should say something like, visit the admissions office. Always use the link destination if an image functions as a link. A question we sometimes get is, when should you include race and gender in the alt text? It may be appropriate to include an individual's race or gender when it's relevant to the context. Some examples. A page about a Pacific Islander scholarship contains a photo of 3 recipients. A photo of a Women in Engineering event. The Diversity at Berkeley page contains a photo of male and female students from a variety of racial and ethnic backgrounds. Are there times when alt text should not be used? Sometimes a web page or document contains an image that is purely decorative. This is a judgment call. Even accessibility pros disagree about where to draw the line. To hide an image from screen readers, use a null alt text tag made up of empty quotes. Note, some content management systems don't allow this. If you have to add alt text to a decorative image, keep it extra brief. How should you decide if an image is decorative or meaningful? We've included a couple of links here if you'd like to read more about the difference. As you're deciding, consider a few questions. Did you choose the image for a reason? Does it tell a story that's relevant to your content? Does the image say something without using words? That's a meaningful image. On the other hand, if hiding the image wouldn't change the experience of the page, then it may be decorative. But here's something to consider. As we discussed, there are a number of groups of people who use alt text for different reasons. If you consider all the different needs, a universal design approach would provide an experience that works as well as possible for as many users as possible. The way you do that is by providing alt text. So no matter what you decide, you will not satisfy all of the people all of the time. The best you can do is to satisfy most of the people most of the time. Here's an example of a web page with 2 types of decorative images. One is a geometric shape that the Berkeley brand calls a prismatic ribbon. The other decorative images are a series of thin turquoise bars. These are purely decorative. They don't add information or convey meaning or emotion. They should be tagged with null alt text tags or be otherwise hidden from assistive technologies. Here's another screenshot of a page with icon images added to informational data. They appear to be clip art. One is a stylized microscope and the other is a simplified atom symbol. They look nice visually, but removing them would not affect the meaning. Here are 2 examples of meaningful images along with the surrounding text content to provide some context. The heading above one of the images reads, Breakthrough in Pathasari Lab. The image contains not only an image of Dr. Teresa Pathasari, but a variety of laboratory equipment bathed in hot pink light. Behind her, a computer monitor displays what appears to be fluorescent green output of lab testing. The heading above the other image reads, Dr. Harris honored with the Builders of Berkeley Award. The image shows Dr. Harris smiling with his arm around Chancellor Christ as she hands him the Builders of Berkeley Award. Both are in semi-formal attire, and behind them are tables with tablecloths and flowers, with the campus in the backdrop. It appears to be twilight, and lights have begun to come on at faraway buildings. Both of these images have a lot of information and tell a story. If you are a sighted user, these images evoke a positive emotional response. Here's a segment of a web page that contains examples of both decorative and meaningful images. The decorative image contains a set of stylized geometric shapes that represent plants. The meaningful image shows a group of students wearing COVID masks and working in a garden which appears to have a variety of food plants. Most of the students are working on a single row of plants and appear to be weeding. The sun is shining and they appear to be very engaged in what they're doing. Here's an image where we want you to decide, is this decorative or meaningful? The heading above the image reads safety protocols, and the text below it talks about keeping staff and students healthy. The image is a stylized illustration of 4 adults and 1 child wearing COVID masks. One of the adults is in a white lab coat and may be a doctor. Would you call this a meaningful image? Or would you call this a decorative image? Guess what? You are correct no matter what you decided. And this is a great example of the type of image that accessibility professionals might disagree about. This isn't easy because the guidance isn't entirely clear and it is somewhat subjective. Personally, I would call this meaningful. However, it strikes me as a little less meaningful than some of the other images we saw, so I'd probably be extra brief in my alt text. And that's a valid approach. If you aren't sure if it's on the border, go ahead and add alt text and keep it extra brief. Let's quickly cover how to add alt text in some common applications. In Open Berkeley on the Drupal platform, you'll be prompted every time you add an image. In the current version, you can't add a null alt text tag. In Gmail, select the image, then click Edit Alt Text. If you don't add alt text, Gmail will use the file name. In Google Docs and Slides, select your image, right-click, then select alt text. In Word, select the image, right-click, then View alt text. We won't say a lot about AI because I'm sure most of us are sick of it. All we'll say is don't use it for alt text. It's rarely done well and it doesn't take context into account. Alt text should be written by humans. Now that we've covered alt text, let's talk about image descriptions. Sometimes the terms alt text and image description are used interchangeably, but image descriptions are longer than alt text. They may be used to describe art, architecture, or photography, and are often used in social media. NASA made news in 2022 for their detailed image descriptions of the James Webb Space Telescope photos. Long descriptions are essentially the same thing as image descriptions, but this term is often associated with images on websites, especially with graphics and diagrams. Long descriptions benefit users who are blind or have low vision, but they also benefit people who have difficulty understanding infographics, which is very common even among those with high levels of education. Use long descriptions for any complex images that contain too much information for alt text. There are a few options of where to put your long descriptions. You can add it in an image caption. You can include the same information in the surrounding page text. Or you can provide a link to a long description on another page. Be sure to also provide a link to get back to the original page content. If you have access to the code, you can add a long description attribute to the image tag. Just be aware that this option will only give screen reader users access to the long description. Let's talk about images that contain text. Whenever possible, you should avoid using text in images. There are several reasons for this. Image text isn't readable by screen readers and text readers. It won't work for Braille readers. It won't be usable if the image doesn't load. Text in an image doesn't reflow if the screen is magnified. It may not be legible on a mobile device. And text in web images is often blurry. If you must use text in an image, be sure to include the same information in the page or document text. For graphics or infographics, consider if the information might also be presented as plain text or a data table, or you can provide a long description. Is there anything else you should know? Yes, in some circumstances, if you don't add alt text, systems will use the image's file name as the alt text. Automated accessibility checkers may not flag these images as missing alt text. So it's important to manually check the alt text in your web content. Image Alt Text Viewer is a free Chrome extension that shows you all the alt text on a page. Thank you for joining us today. I hope it was helpful. Here are a few additional resources.